A lot of people think the big news stories today are the snowstorm that's hitting the Midwest or the looming federal budget cuts. But judging by local news, there's apparently an even bigger story that's sweeping the nation right now. Check it out.
Well, if you filled up your gas tank lately, then you don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are on the rise. I know.
That's kind of scary.
My name is Cody Quick.
And I'm Garrett Brooks. We're here to discuss gas and oil prices and whether or not it's really a scam. Cody, can you give us some insight into the history of gas and oil?
The gas and oil industry dates all the way back to 347 AD, where oil was first drilled in China by using sharpened bits attached to bamboo poles. As silly as it sounds, they were able to drill down 800 feet using this technique. It wasn't until 1859 that we struck black gold here in a small town of Titusville, Pennsylvania, by a fellow of the name Colonel Drake. Mr. Drake was able to reach gold by hammering a pipe into the ground.
How far along have the methods of drilling come today?
Since then, we came a long ways from hammering a pipe into the ground. We now have three most common processes of oil drilling. First is your offshore drilling. Second is directional or your more advanced drilling. And third, most recently, oil sand extraction.
Can you give us a brief description of the process of drilling?
There are four main stages when it comes into oil extraction. The first is the exploration stage, where geologists research numerous sites to find if they're viable sources for oil and natural gas. Second goes into the actual well development stage, where the land is then cleared and the rigs are set in place. Third goes into production stage, where the bits actually drill down into the ground until you reach oil. Once the oil is reached, we will then back the bit out, attach the pump to it, and then pump oil until the source either runs dry or is no longer economically viable as a source of oil. Fourth, you go into the site abandonment stage. Once this site is declared no longer viable source of oil, we'll then return it to its natural state or as close as they can.
Is it true the U.S. currently consumes over 20 million barrels of gasoline a day?
Yes, it is. And of those 20 million, 12 million are imported from over 80 different countries.
Who do we receive a majority of our imports from?
OPEC.
What exactly is OPEC?
OPEC is known as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, which is made up of 13 countries. OPEC was created in 1960 in order to set oil prices by controlling production. Prior to their existence, 90% of the world's imports and exports of oil was controlled by a major oil cartel known as the Seven Sisters. Now that you have a basic understanding of the oil and gas industry, let's switch gears and talk about how this is priced. Garrett, can you tell us how gas is priced?
The main assumption people make is that they believe the price of gas is based solely on the price of crude oil. Though it does make up a majority of the cost, it is only one of four components that make up the total cost. These components consist of crude oil prices, refining costs, marketing and distribution costs, and taxes, both federal and state.
What determines price fluctuation?
Market factors are the primary drivers of price fluctuation. Of all the market factors, the EIA points to crude oil as the main contributor in the frequent change of prices. This is due to the fact that crude oil is a function of supply and demand. If the world demand for crude oil rises, gas prices rise. The economic recession, natural disasters, and turmoil between countries within OPEC have all had an effect on our prices.
Why do prices continue to rise even though we've seen a recent boom in domestic drilling?
Even though we're seeing imports at their lowest level since 1987, the world cannot produce enough oil to keep pace with the rising global incomes. If I'd have to point a finger, I'd point it towards China. It has been reported that China alone has consumed over half the world's extra oil since 2010, and last year recorded a 5.5% increase in their average global consumption. Experts project China to be the largest consumer in oil within the next 2 decades. The only thing keeping us from seeing record highs is the conservative measures countries have begun to take. Americans, for instance, have begun to buy more fuel-efficient cars. After extensive research, we found that it is virtually impossible to detect whether Americans as a whole are being scammed. What we have found is the gas and oil industry has become a breeding ground for companies to directly scam small groups of individuals through activities such as collusion, price gouging, and investment frauds. Cody, can you tell us what price collusion is?
Price collusion is a criminal offense where multiple companies work together to set the price of oil at a certain level in order to gain large profits. This is essentially used to drive competitors out of the market.
What is price gouging?
Price gouging is an unlawful and unethical practice used by oil companies to charge more than the normal selling price of oil. This is oftentimes used in a state of emergencies like natural disasters.
One instance of investment fraud that I have become aware of was made public in 2007 when the Securities and Exchange Commission filed suit against Gary M. Milby and Mid-America Energy Incorporated. This particular scam caught my eye because Mid-America is based out of Portland, Tennessee. For those of you not familiar with where Portland is located, it is only an hour and a half from MTSU's campus. It was alleged that Mid-America raised over $19 million from 375 investors, many of which were senior citizens. They were able to draw on these investors by leading them to believe they would return huge profits when in all actuality they were using the investments to buy BMWs and other luxurious items. Cody, can you tell us what the U.S. is doing to combat practices such as these?
The U.S. is currently working hard to fight scandals like these. In fact, in 2011, President Obama asked Attorney General to work hand in hand with federal and state agencies to better monitor unwrongful doings in the oil and gas industry.
There are a few things we can do. This includes safe and responsible production of oil at home, which we're pursuing. In fact, last year, American oil production reached its highest level since 2003. On Thursday, my Attorney General also launched a task force with just one job: rooting out cases of fraud or manipulation in the oil markets that might affect gas prices, including any illegal activity by traders and speculators. We're going to make sure that no one is taking advantage of the American people for their own short-term gain.